I remember there was commotion in the house once and everyone seemed a bit sad and guilty. And my mom told me, no, don't go to speak to your dad. He's sleeping right now. And eventually, once I got the information of what happened, he was working late nights in the shop that he owned. He was attacked. And the same thing happened years later as he worked as a taxi driver. He was attacked with a bottle. He was left with a black eye for months. One of his fingers is more like a stump that he lost when he was young working in a paper mill. A lot of men have similar stories. I was working late once in 2018 and a group of guys tried to stab me. Fast forward a couple of years and I'm working night shifts in a homeless accommodation next to guys who don't really have anything to lose. There are millions of men working death professions, dangerous jobs, and this isn't spoke about anywhere near as much as it needs to be. A death profession is usually a low-end, low-wage job that doesn't really require like a higher level of education. In practical terms, these jobs pay usually an extra £1 to £2 per hour, but they increase your risk of death on the workplace by twice as much, maybe more. And almost every single person who works in a death profession is male. Of course they are. I didn't even need to tell you that fact. Think of a dangerous job and you think of men working it. I always imagine that minority who's come from a different country into somewhere in the West and he's trying to create a life for his family. Of course, he's not qualified for a lot of the higher end jobs that he would dream of one day. And that's why he really wants his son to do well in his studies so that he can get one of those jobs that this father looks up to. So he makes money in the ways that he can. This is why you often see minorities working the same jobs like Uber and owning shops and having their own small businesses. And if you haven't been around this space, please believe me when I say that these guys witness the worst of society. When you work in a shop and you're open late nights and you sell alcohol and drunk 20-something-year-olds, they're even worse than Jeffrey. These are the type of guys who are like literally, like they just like to be violent and shit and racist and everything. And they come into the shop, they hurl abuse at this guy who's just trying to make money for his family. Why is he open so late? Why does an Uber driver work at 2 a.m. instead of being in bed with his wife? Because they literally make a couple of pounds more per hour on those late nights. And in late nights is where the danger spikes up. Construction workers, men who work in oil rigs, lumberjacks. We're not gonna do this shit like almost entirely like 96. No. We can just say it's filled up entirely of men. If they can exaggerate their facts and say shit like there's such a thing as the wage gap, I don't need to even explain the wage gap to you, but the true wage gap, it's like such a basic like key stage 3, like not even GCSE, like primary school level maths that some random feminist 10 years ago got, and people still bring it up, and every single time it almost makes my blood boil, because all they did was count a certain number of men, certain number of women, see their income and see, oh, but men's on average is higher. What they don't see is men are more than 10 times more likely to die on the job. What they don't see is that men fill up overtime hours, that men are more likely to still go into work when they're sick because they need to. The real wage gap is the fact that this gap isn't big enough. If someone's risking their life, then should they not be paid more?
He's a man, so it must be sexist.
This must be like a middle finger to their face, like a slap on the face to the men who are actually working dangerous jobs and they're being told that like women aren't being paid enough. Imagine the outrage if there was a discrepancy between a man and a woman's income in some random company. That would literally make the news. And you know what's weird? More and more there is a discrepancy in this wage. More and more it's so clear that companies are actually paying men and women different. And of course, it's not in the way that most people think. They're paying women more. Women are getting promoted just literally because of the fact that they're female. How is that not the sexism that we should be discussing?